Hello, and welcome to the American Marketing Association New York Chapter's content series, The Changing Role of the Chief Marketing Officer. My name is Michelle Shantera, and I'm the Vice President of America's Growth Marketing at Cisco, and I also have a seat on the board of the American Marketing Association New York. I am super excited to be here today, and I will be your host as we take you through a conversation between myself and Geoff Collin, who is at Microsoft. He heads up Microsoft's advertising brand studio. Geoff has often been called a compelling voice at the intersection of marketing, tech, media, and popular culture. That sounds interesting. He describes his role as bringing technology and human behavior together to create the most ultimate marketing experience, solutions, and products for customers and clients. Geoff worked with a range of brands, including Spotify, Netflix, American Express, Coca-Cola, IBM, The Economist, US Network, WWE, History, and Red Bull. Wow, that is quite a lineup. He is also the author of the 2016 book, Disruptive Marketing: What Growth Hackers, Data Punks, and Other Hybrid Thinkers Can Teach Us About Navigating the New Normal. Geoff, huge welcome to you. I know you started your career in the music industry, and before joining Microsoft, you were the Vice President of Digital Strategy at Ogilvy. Tell me how your early career experiences informed where you are today and ultimately the path that you took in your career to get that amazing lineup of experiences.
That's a great question, Michelle. I think one of the interesting things is in the past couple of years, maybe the past 5 to 8 years, there's been a lot of discussion amongst marketers in terms of how they use data, how they get their hands on data, how they're able to apply that to their day-to-day. If we rewind almost 20 some years ago, there's this belief system that data did not exist back then. That's sort of a big issue if we look at certain sectors of society. There was a lot of retail data. There was a lot of data that actually explained what was selling from retail stores. If you looked at certain categories like the music industry where I was, you had SoundScan data, you had Arbitron data, you had data that basically explained what was selling where in which market. And that allowed you to plan better strategies in terms of what your go-to-market plans were. If we come back to present day, what we have is we just have much more robust data. We have more of it, so to speak. So I think this belief system that data is this new map that we're able to use, that's not really, so truthful in the sense that it's existed for quite a bit of time. It's probably just gotten more efficient. At the same time, there's much more of it. So it's caused some havoc with organizations because it's a matter of, okay, well, which data is important to us that we can use so we can figure out what our strategy is. I think, if we basically come to the agreement that, data has always been important, I think we can get beyond this belief system that it's brand new to, people in the field of marketing.
Our marketers today have to think about data as a source of information to inform what they're going to be doing. And I think very often we've ignored, as you alluded to, that this is something we've had access to for several years. It's just come in different forms. And with this notion of digitization just exploding, to your point, we just now have more digital data to tell us how our customers are behaving so we can take the right marketing approach. So completely agree with you on that. So look, you've had a lot of experiences with many top brands, and clearly you have had an opportunity to engage with many CMOs. So what do you think's happening with the role of the CMO? Is it changing? Is it evolving? I can tell you from a Cisco point of view, we no longer have a CMO title. We have a growth marketing officer.
There's just much more responsibility. I think what's been interesting is there's been discussion on, should there be two chief marketing officers at some of these bigger companies? Almost looking at it like how you have two creative directors many times at some companies because they have different skill sets and different strengths. One might be a little bit more technical, one a more artistic. So there's questions now, should that be the case at some of these companies? What I look at and what I sort of have been researching the last couple of years, including when I wrote my book, is that's less necessary than really the development of new skills based on where you're not strong as a chief marketing officer. So if you come more from a traditional background, that's okay. How do you strengthen in areas that are less traditional? So areas, like digital transformation, areas that deal with e-commerce, areas that basically require, much more of speaking with your chief technical officers than maybe in the past. At the same time, if you're a CMO that's much more digital and much more technically inclined, that's not going to get you through this new, area that we're in either. You have to really understand the traditional aspects of the role. What's the artistic side? What's the creative direction? What are the big ideas? Remember, people are still motivated, Michelle, off of big ideas. And so it's not just a matter of, hey, we went out there with a campaign and we were able to measure all these things. At the end of the day, that's not what resonates with humans. So again, this is requiring, hybrids to really take over a lot of these roles. I think there's a lot of people who are very equipped to do them. I'm actually pretty excited when I look at a number of people who sit in chief marketing officer roles now. Many of them happen to be women, which is really a good move, I think, in terms of getting diversity into the C-suite. I think also many of them come from sort of that background where they may have said, hey, I've done digital for many, many years, the past 10 years in my career, and they may have a creative background as well. And that's I think that's the perfect person for these roles.
And I think one of the things that I know you're passionate about and have perspective is kind of bringing the human aspect in and really having that emotional intelligence when you're doing marketing. I'd love to have you build more on that because I think that's really important considering what's happening around us from a macro perspective. So can you just speak to some of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We did, this research at the end of 2019. So it was, commissioned for 2020 and sort of looking at this entire decade ahead of us. And in it, we looked at the different types of intelligence that are out there. We found that there's 9 different types of intelligence. There's a tendency of much of us to be rated on the intelligence that you think we would be rated on. Are you good at math? Are you good at, language? What we're not rated on are the other areas. Are we good with emotional intelligence? Are we good with understanding the spaces around us, the physical spaces that are around us and how people might inhabit them? Are we good at really understanding more of the human side of the spectrum, as you've noted? And I think if we look at how we build teams in marketing, if we draw on sort of these 9 different types of intelligence, there's probably a place for us to build our team where there's a person strong in each one of those areas rather than, hey, I have the best data analysts that make up my team. That's important, but many times, you have people in those roles who don't understand the human implications of what the data is that they're pulling. How is that applied to the world at large?
That's brilliant, and it's something I don't think we often take a step back and consider when we're building teams. Because to your point, how do we build the best product? How do we build the best marketing campaign? So speaking of being able to connect and be human, we're here in this pandemic, which has drastically changed how we work, how we market, how we engage with our customers, because we can no longer walk into an office and have a meeting. What's some of your points of view on what this pandemic is going to do relative to the marketing profession And what do you think CMOs need to be thinking about as we make this transition into what would be, using your terms, the new normal?
Yeah, I mean, I think one area is it's going to probably speed up, digital transformation at a more rapid rate. So, 2 years ago, if you went and bid on the term digital transformation, a lot of companies came up on those search results. Now it's a matter of how are you actually going to put that into application for a number of companies. And what we mean by this is look at the changed human behaviors. If buying online and then picking up in store is a big behavior where you may have curbside pickup for a lot of these retail outlets, are you set up for that in a way that you can carry that out? I mean, it's not a matter of just saying, hey, people can buy on our website. You have to have tickets. You have to have the ability to tell people what time to show up so that they can get their materials. You have to be able to track a lot of that in sort of your supply chain management. It changes a lot of the back end of your infrastructure a little bit more than how we had been operating for the past 2 decades. There's also the importance of a lot of things are going to be very geo-specific moving forward. That means that some states are going to be operating in a different way than others. So, out on the West Coast, most of that might be stay at home for a period of time. They may tell certain businesses, hey, you can't have people come back in and you have to operate a particular way. That requires businesses also to not just have a one size fits all. So we've talked a lot about personalization for the past decade. This is really where it's going to come in handy because you have to personalize. What someone is doing in Georgia is different from what someone is doing in New York State, which someone is doing in California. And so all this discussion the past decade of, hey, how do we personalize things really has to come into execution. So I think those are the two big areas. Speeding up digital transformation is going to be a big one. And then personalization is going to be another one. I think the third area might be, automation in terms of what can you automate that maybe in the past you were relying on a team to do. And I think in a lot of areas for this, it's going to be, how do you automate more data so that you can basically collect that and then have humans decipher that. You bring up an excellent point. I mean, I was talking this past week with someone about, some technologies, what we're using right now. So video peer to peer, how is this used in a way that you're using it for one-to-one sales? In the past, you may have said, hey, we have to get on a plane. We're going to go meet with that customer. That's physically not possible right now. But how do you make it so that it feels more human is going to be, I think, up to the task of marketing and sales professionals, moving forward. I think a lot of live stream technology is going to be interesting in terms of how do you showcase or how you educate customers at scale on how your solutions or your goods or services work. I think we've seen a lot of this. It's been very popular in Asia for the past couple of years. That might speed it up here in the West where it has not been so popular, which is almost this combination of webinar meets event meets live stream, where you're trying to basically educate people about, what your goods or services are. As you know, Michelle, in the past, that would have been, hey, we're going to go sponsor a huge tent pole physical event and we're going to present on that stage. And then we're going to have people come over to our booth and then we're going to showcase all the technology and all the goods and services we have. That now has to be created in a virtual environment, which requires a lot more creativity if we think about it in terms of how that shows up.
We're dead in the middle of this, so we've got to as peers in the industry, we've got to work through this together. Obviously, you're spending time with your clients and looking at what was and what will be. What kinds of conversations are you having, and what's changing relative to the work you're doing with the clients that you serve?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has really been almost acting as a consultant to them. Many have really, fallen on harder times than they had been the past couple of years. If we look at how many companies were performing, maybe they weren't, having explosive growth, but they were having enough, incremental growth that they thought, okay, we're managing the business well, we're doing okay, our margins are all right. And now we've really moved into a point where that revenue is down. There's, decisions that have to be made in terms of furloughing employees or possibly cutting back on a lot of marketing spend. So the questions that I basically am asked are really more, what data do you have that can help us navigate where we need to go next? Now we're almost at that point where they're looking at what are the new opportunities. So I got through this entire sort of rogue wave that has hit me. Okay, now I have to figure out what damage I have to my vessel and where I basically can go, next. Do I set a new path? Do we basically keep some of the things going that we've been doing? As you know, Michelle, some areas you have to switch because most physical events are not happening. So there isn't a question there. It's just a matter of like, okay, here's what we're going to do on the virtual side. So just as as much consultation I can give to clients and customers, I think has been important to them. Just even just having a, hey, we have an idea, Geoff, and we want to bounce it off of you. I think that's been important, especially if some companies maybe have also had to downgrade usage of their third party agencies because maybe they've had some budget cuts, and some of that has basically been cutting back on their agency time. So they may come and just say, hey, you're a solution provider, you're someone that we use their your solutions, could we just basically ask your help or your opinion in these areas? And I think that those types of roles, so if we look at the last decade, marketing, you may have had a lot of marketers that did a combination of performance and inspiration and creativity. Now it's there's also that consultative area. Okay, what do I do when I have to think about this? And I think there's been a lot more discussion on long-term planning, because I don't think people want to be caught flat-footed with whatever decisions they are making. So we have a tendency of thinking in things like situations like this, Michelle, for people to think like, hey, what are the quick wins that I can do? While that's important, they're also thinking of like, what's the long-term changes I need to make so that if things happen or get worse, we're not continuing to maybe sink or lose opportunities.
That's awesome. Well, Geoff, I really enjoyed the conversation. I want to thank you for being here and being a part of the changing role of the CMO.